This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shin. In recent weeks, more than 1 million people have been displaced in Lebanon amid the widening war in the Middle East. That's out of the 5.5 million people living in Lebanon, according to the UN Refugee Agency. The country faces economic and financial uncertainty, and there's been nearly 2,000 deaths since the start of the conflict. Today, we hear about the ongoing crisis and the ripple effects here in Connecticut. Later, we meet two Lebanese Americans living and working in our state as chef owners of local restaurants. First up, we have Samar El Yassir, who is the Lebanon and Jordan country director for the humanitarian aid organization ANERA, or the American Near East Refugee Aid. She lives and works in Lebanon. Thank you so much for joining us today, Samar.
Thank you, Catherine, for having me this morning.
And also with us is Ciaran Donnelly. He's the Senior Vice President of International Programs at the International Rescue Committee, and he joins us from New York. Thank you so much for joining us, Ciaran.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to jump straight to it. Samar, just yesterday, the Associated Press reported that an Israeli airstrike hit an apartment building in northern Lebanon, which killed at least 21 people. So that's what we know so far. Can you give us an update on what you've seen in recent weeks?
What we have seen in the past 2 weeks is a nightmare. We can call it many names, but for me, it's been sheer nightmare for me, for my staff and family, for the people we serve. Suddenly, the escalations took a very swift and dangerous turn. Airstrikes are everywhere. There's nowhere that is safe. You know, for 1 year, there has been some cross-border escalations, but in the past 2 weeks, the Israeli airstrikes have been hitting everywhere. What you called, what you just mentioned in the northern Lebanon village, nobody expected this. Who lives there? It's only civilians, you know. It's not a Hezbollah targeted area. So this is what's happening in Lebanon now. Nowhere is safe. Airstrikes are killing everybody, and this is characterized by mass destruction, mass displacement. 1/3 of the population is already displaced. People had to leave their homes with nothing on but their own clothes because they had to rush out of their homes because of the evacuation orders given to them by the army. In 20 minutes, if you don't leave, we'll put all the building down. So people are so terrified. They left their homes with nothing on. They're in the streets. They don't have anything, and they lost everything. This is what is happening. And they're taking refuge in schools and mosques and churches, wherever they can. So it's a total chaos, and it's a total human tragedy, to be honest.
And Ciaran, this is something that you've also have eyes on for a while. Can you describe what the country was going through before these recent attacks? Because unfortunately, this is not a new thing.
Yeah, of course, Catherine. And maybe just to clarify for listeners, well, I'm the only guest here who's not personally connected to the Lebanon crisis. My organization, the International Rescue Committee, has been working in Lebanon continuously since 2012. We have 350 Lebanese staff around the country providing humanitarian services, and we previously responded to the 2006 war as well. So I'm really coming with that perspective. And I think it's important for people to understand that Lebanon's fragile recovery from decades of civil war was really set back by the COVID epidemic, which brought about an economic crisis in the country. In 2023, there was 172% inflation at one point, and the Lebanese pound lost about 98% of its value. So just to illustrate the economic challenge, which in turn has translated into a public sector crisis. And so social services have been really under strain in Lebanon in being able to provide for people. So after a year of prolonged anxiety and stress and low-level conflict, this escalation has really brought Lebanese government services, Lebanese civil society, the Lebanese population to the brink of an all-out humanitarian catastrophe.
If I may add here also, Catherine, is because of the fragility of the Lebanese economy, Lebanon and its people are not prepared at all for such a war. You know, when we speak about 1/3 of the population having to be displaced, there's nothing is prepared for this. The schools that have been opened and collective shelters that have been opened, they're empty spaces. It doesn't have any water, any electricity, or bedding items. We're talking about basics here, you know. So we find ourselves as ANERA and other humanitarian organizations having to respond quickly to the basic needs, to do water tracking, for example, and give mattresses, blankets, bedding items, food, so people can survive. And already we're very, very concerned about the situation because in a very short time, we're seeing incidences of lice, scabies, and cholera starting to be seen in these collective shelters. And we're just in the start of the war, and we're very concerned of what will happen if this continues or escalates more, because we're seeing escalation day after day.
Well, we definitely want to get into the public health aspect and the mental health aspect of this as well as we watch what's happening and as this conversation continues. And building on what Ciaran and both you and Ciaran had mentioned earlier, that there's been a severe amount of displacement with people. And also, this is such an ongoing conflict. It's been going on for a very long time. Samar, can you remind us, how did this war expand into Lebanon and why are certain places being targeted?
I wish I knew, because really you don't understand what's happening. Last year, 7th of October, escalations happened in Gaza. Israel and Hamas started fighting, and the whole of Gaza is being wiped out, and mass destruction, mass displacement. We have seen the crisis of Gaza. And Lebanon got into this through Hezbollah because they were fighting also, but small-scale escalations. And suddenly, out of nowhere, this escalated into a full-scale war. I want to emphasize here that the Lebanese people and the Lebanese government doesn't want war. We're a peaceful people, We never asked for war. We never initiated it. We don't want it. And we had enough wars in Lebanon. I myself have witnessed war since I was born. I was born into the civil war of Lebanon back in the 70s and lived 17 years, the first 17 years of my life in civil war, and witnessed the first Israeli invasion in 82 and lost my father. I was, I became an orphan at a very young age for nothing, for what? And then again, the 2006 war of Israel on Lebanon. And now this. We had enough. We don't want war. And war, we believe that war only brings destruction. And the Lebanese people are very peaceful people. We're known for our good food, of our intelligent people. We're not known for war. And this is a war that was brought to us by others in our land. And we want to emphasize that although Israel says that this is not a war they're doing for Lebanon, but the only casualty here is the Lebanese people. All these displaced are the Lebanese people. The civilian houses that are being destructed and flattened down are for Lebanese people. And this is and the civilians that are being killed every day are innocent civilian people. The aid workers that are being killed, the health workers, all of these are civilian people that do not want the war. They never initiated this war. So we really call for the ceasefire. Oh, this is all we want. We want ceasefire, and we want the protection of civilians and civilian people.
And Ciaran, since this has happened recently, out of the displaced people, do you have an idea of how many of them are children? And since the IRC has been involved, has it gotten better or worse?
So the official statistics don't give a breakdown by demographics, by age, but informal reports suggest upwards of 60% of those displaced may be children. And just to dig into the displacement a little more, and Samar spoke about some of the shelters. So there's about 1,000 shelters have been set up by the government, which are being supported by the international humanitarian community. But they only host about 40% of the 700,000 people displaced within Lebanon. Of the rest, they've sought shelter in abandoned buildings. They're with relatives. Many of our own staff, as I'm sure the same for Samar, many of our staff are hosting their relatives or have been displaced themselves. And almost 30%, according to the assessments that we've seen and that we've done, are living in either tented settlements or in open or partially open places. People are under bridges, they're sleeping in cars. So it's a really mixed and dynamic picture of people struggling to provide for themselves. One other dimension I want to highlight is the situation of Syrian refugees in Lebanon. So Lebanon has hosted over 1 million Syrian refugees, in addition to the 5.5 million population in Lebanon for many years. And many of those have been displaced within Lebanon and often are struggling, or more marginalized, struggling to access services. And we've seen over 400,000 people leave Lebanon and go back to Syria. So about 3/4 of them are Syrian, about 100,000 are Lebanese. But if you can picture how desperate people must be to have to go back to the country they fled from seeking safety because of this situation. And conditions in Syria are equally, or in some cases even more challenging for people than they are in Lebanon.
And we've had this conversation elsewhere as well, where we talk about it's not just the physical health care that is needed. Oftentimes the mental health aspect is dire as well. And it sounds like so many children, so many adults, I mean, of course, are going through this extremely astronomical trauma in this region. Ciaran, can you talk about both of those needs for adults and children, really?
Mental health is a huge problem in any conflict environment, in any displacement situation. And, people have been uprooted at a moment's notice, as Samar said, had to flee from their homes, kids separated from their families, their schools turned into collective shelters, the places that they think of as being safe for them and their lives, where they seek solace and comfort, are no longer that. Sometimes they actually become places of danger and of harm for them. And so it is a real challenge for people. And important for us to remember, this didn't just start a couple of weeks ago. For the past year, there's been a really elevated level of stress and anxiety among people in Lebanon in anticipation of this happening. There's been low-level conflict, as Samar referenced. And so people have been really at the edge of their ability to cope in many cases, and this has been put real challenges on them. Part of what we're doing, we have mobile teams that are providing basic health services, supporting with basic needs, cash distribution for families, but they're also providing psychological first aid and working with teachers and caregivers and parents to help them provide some psychological support for their children. But we know that there's a first wave of needs that comes about because of conflict and displacement. There's a second wave that comes about because of the public health risks that you mentioned earlier. But there's a third wave which will go on for a long time, which is the long-term traumatic psychological effect on children and on adults of these experiences that will long outlast the conflict itself.
And so with everything that you just said, Ciaran, and going into the second and the third waves, and as this continues, what is needed right now in Lebanon?
So the most important thing that's needed is to stop fighting and bombing. And I
Okay.
say this, with little real expectation that it's going to happen, unfortunately. But what we've seen across the region from Gaza and Lebanon over the last year is moves towards escalation rather than de-escalation. We've seen challenges in scaling up humanitarian assistance. We've seen shortages of funds. So we obviously need and want to be able to scale up our support to people. But what we do in the absence of moves towards ceasefire, cessation of hostilities, ultimately is putting a Band-Aid on the wounds. What we need is to stop the fighting.
Samara, would love to get some final thoughts from you as well. What do you hope our listeners get out from this conversation today?
My hope is that the listeners really understand and stand in solidarity with Lebanon and understand that this is a human catastrophe that requires advocacy on, as Ciaran said, to stop the war. This is what everybody should be working towards, ceasefire, ending the war immediately, and help Lebanon recover. This is what we want from people, to stand in solidarity with us, understand that we don't want this war, and really we want supporters to help us stop this war immediately.
You've been listening to Samar El Yassir. She's the Lebanon and Jordan Country Director for the humanitarian aid organization ANERA, also known as the American Near East Refugee Aid. Thank you so much, Samar, for being with us today and sharing your experiences.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
And you were also listening to Ciaran Donnelly, who's the Senior Vice President of International Programs with the International Rescue Committee. Thank you, Ciaran, for joining us today as well.
Thank you, Catherine.
Connecticut Public has been covering the widening war in the Middle East from all different angles. To see all of our coverage, visit ctpublic.org. And to check out all of NPR's coverage, visit npr.org/Middle East. Coming up, we hear from two Lebanese American residents of Connecticut. They react to the current crisis, plus share their love for Lebanese food, culture, and hospitality. You can join the conversation, 888-720-9677, or leave us a comment on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. Today, we're talking about the current conflict in Lebanon. But the country has dealt with several conflicts in recent history, including a civil war from 1975 to 1990. After that war, many left the country seeking a new life abroad, including here in Connecticut. For decades, Connecticut has been home to nearly 10,000 Lebanese Americans. Our next guests say that Lebanon is always with them. They return to their home country as often as they can, but they're not sure when they'll be able to visit next as the war in the Middle East widens. Still with them, though, is a love for Lebanese food, culture, and hospitality, and they're working to bring this cuisine to anyone who will try it. Joining us now are two chef owners of local restaurants here in our state. Reem Hadir is a chef and founder of Lebanese Mediterranean Kitchen and Bar in Watertown, and she left Lebanon when she was 15 years old. Thank you so much, Reem, for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Good morning, everybody. And it's Lebanese Creole. And I'm just correcting you.
Yes, you should.
Lebanese means
Lebanese.
Lebanese proudly, and I would love to represent my country with the name and my restaurant.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
And also with us is George Nujim, who's the chef owner of Nujim's Mediterranean Cuisine in Winstead, and he left Lebanon after the Civil War. George, thank you for joining us today.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Any corrections needed?
Nope.
Pretty easy.
Yeah, we just want to make sure we get all of the things, and we very much appreciate both of you being here with us today. And I want to jump straight to the conversation here. Reem, you were born in Lebanon right at the end of the Civil War. Could you describe what was it like growing up in Lebanon during sort of a post-war period?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I was born in 1990. So, When I was born, my mom tells me that in the hospital there was no curtains. So I was born when it was ending, right? I don't recall any of it. But growing up in Lebanon, of course, you hear it from your grandparents, from your uncles, aunts, mom, dad. Experiences you see, you hear about growing up. This is normal for us growing up, like knowing deeply about your culture and everything. Growing up in Lebanon, though, was a totally different thing for me as I'm 33. So you can imagine, like I said, I did not live the war. It was just beautiful. It was all full of culture, fun, family, tradition, food, I remember my dad taking me every Sunday to see somewhere in Lebanon. So I know my Lebanon, everywhere in Lebanon. It was Sunday that we would wait, Dad, packing us in the car, 8 a.m. Let's go. Where are we going? Here, Baalbek, Batroun, Jbeil. It doesn't matter where, but he wanted us to know Lebanon and see Lebanon. Of course, at school, you study about the history, you study about all the stuff, and you hear it. But I grew up in a beautiful Lebanon, in the village, and like where my family comes from, Beirut, some from the village. So I was all over. I lived the best life in Lebanon. And even when we moved from Lebanon when I was 15, I remember I used to blame my mom and say, Mom, why did we need to leave Lebanon? I mean, I have my friends. I go to private school. You have your businesses. What am I going to seek outside Lebanon? Okay, we're comfortable, this, that. But, parents always look like, okay, let us get you outside, educate you outside, take you outside Lebanon. Now everybody wants to go back to Lebanon.
The circle kind of comes for a full back.
Yeah.
And it's so lovely to hear that experience, because that's not something that we are familiar with here in the States. And George, you were kind of smiling and nodding as Reem was sharing her story. Your life was very different before you came to the United States, because you actually did live through the Lebanese Civil War.
I did. Fortunately or unfortunately, I lived the whole Lebanese story. War, peace, love, food, family, all of it. From A to Z.
What was it like living there for you?
There was a moment where it was the best moment of my life. And unfortunately, I was in the Civil War myself. And the reason I left Lebanon because of that. So there was mixed emotions. But the love of Lebanon and the country, the family, it's deep in my heart and my soul.
Do you have a happy memory that maybe sparked when you're listening to Reem's description?
Oh, lots of it. Traveling, families, the country, sightseeing. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see a lot of it. When I grew up, and I got displaced when I was 13 years old, moved to the city, and the city was divided. And we couldn't travel to all part of Lebanon. So now when I go to Lebanon, I want to go visit the places that I was forbidden from visiting before.
And have you been able to visit those places since then?
I have. I still have few places on my bucket list. And Lebanon is such a small country, and it's a shame that we can't just live and experience the love of the country that we have.
This is kind of an obvious question that I want to pose to both of you. We'll go with George first. Is what draws you back?
People, culture, all kinds of people. Lebanon is very diverse. I think from my personal experience, Lebanon is the most democratic country in the Middle East.
Absolutely.
I hear that about Israel. Israel is not. It's just a one-sided, and I have nothing against Israel, but in the West they say Israel is the most democratic country. It's not. It's a Jewish state. So if you're not, Lebanon is a multicultural and multidimensional country. It is the most democratic a place. We love each other. The war tears us apart, unfortunately. But once we get together, whether we're here or in Lebanon, there's love and there's beauty and richness in our culture that we always try to bring to the table in Connecticut with our food.
Yes.
And so that's all. That's how I could describe it.
Well, I mean, these experiences, emotions, and love are so multi-layered, so much nuance, so much complexity. What do you think, Reem? What draws you back to Lebanon?
Well, like I said, and like George said, there's like so many things bring you and draws you back to Lebanon. Brings me back the memories where the whole family, I mean, a tradition, and George can definitely agree on that, is Sunday in Lebanon is very big. Okay, Sunday in Lebanon, the whole family is meeting up to eat. And I'm not talking mom, dad, and the kids. I'm talking if you guys live within, an hour, hour and a half from each other, you're meeting up at somebody's house, or most likely the grandparents' house. And you have all the family sitting around, everybody's cooking, everybody's eating. We're definitely the music going. We're dancing while we're cooking. We're people that love to live. Okay. My memories of Lebanon and what brings me, like, I want to take my kids the same places I went, the same way I used to go out and, like, for example, here, I don't allow my kid, for example, at 7:00 outside and go get me this, get me that. I remember it was so safe growing up for me that we would be out for hours. We don't have a phone.
Right.
Mom doesn't know where we are. She knows we're at our friends.
Right.
God knows, 5 hours. Just make sure come before dark. Okay. I want those things, those memories, the restaurants, the beauty, the amount of places that is in Lebanon that you can visit, although it's so small, but you will not run out. I'm telling you, you will not. Don't tell me you've seen it all. You've been in no, Lebanon is tiny, but the amount of things to do, to see, to visit is crazy. The love of family, we value so much. We value seeing our cousins, and checking on maybe our very extended family. We don't go and do family reunions every year or whatever. We do these every Sunday. Okay. Right. We're tired of it. We're like doing this all the time.
Yeah. George is laughing.
This is our Lebanon.
Yeah, well, you mentioned eating, and this is definitely something I want to get into with both of you for obvious reasons, because both of you are chefs and restaurant owners. Food is clearly a big theme this hour. And we've talked about this before, where it tends to be sort of the universal language of love and culture, and it kind of transcends those barriers.
Definitely.
So tell me, where did your love for food come from, Reem?
Okay, well, I grew up with my grandma living with us, my dad's mom, and my mother would work till 5:00 always. I would come back from school, be with my grandma, and before that, if it's a day off, mom would be working as well. I'd be with my grandma, and she would put me on it. 8:00, come on, we have to catch it. You're if it's Saturday, I'm like, why are you waking me up at 8? It's like, get me the rice. We got to start. We barely have time till your parents come. I'm like, what do you mean? My parents don't come till like 5. And then, in the Lebanese house, Sunday, your dad waking you up at 5:30. Okay, let's go to the fish market. Okay, dad, sure, let's go to the fish market. Okay, and then he gets like a bunch of, let's say, kinds of meat, and then he's like, okay, let's sit. Let's divide this. Let's cut this for steak. Let's do this for ground beef. And then you go to your aunt's place. She has a restaurant. You also go help out with the potatoes, help out with, I don't know, baba ganoush, this, that. It's like wherever I went in my family, okay, there's food happening. Even if we're at home, we're making, jam and stuff like that. The kids will sit around and start, doing apples, the strawberries, stuff like that for the jam. We would be sent out to collect like the olives off the tree when they fall, like hit it. And we always were involved with food. Okay. My family always was involved. Like, I remember me and my brother would pull out a whole dinner, okay, for everybody. And we're like so young. I'm 10, he's 15 and stuff like that. So, I mean, I knew how to cook on an early age because of the house I lived in. regardless that all Lebanese love to cook, love to eat, and in every house, there's a mother or there's somebody that knows to perfect them dishes. And like I said, I learned from my dad, my aunt, my grandma, and I already had that love for food, and they just grew it more and more in me. And here I am.
Well, I think we made the mistake of talking about food so early in the morning. I think everyone should have given a warning that we're going to be talking about food. Well, George, same question to you. Where did your love for food come from? And sounds like hospitality is a huge theme as well in the Lebanese community.
It is, but if I reflect back, since I was a kid, men don't hang out in the kitchen. But since I was a kid, I was always in the kitchen, not working, just
waiting.
Noisy.
Nah.
Just wanted to see. I used to watch carefully, and that's how I kind of got into the food. And also, like she mentioned, I grew up farming. We have our own everything we grew everything imaginable, and we used it for cooking. And when I moved to United States, I was in the wine business, food business, traveled to Europe. It kind of accelerated, and I missed the flavor, the culture, and that's how I got into my own business.
And how did you get that started?
Actually out of necessity when I moved here. I started a small catering business, and I remember myself making the first turkey, which is not
How did that go?
It was actually such a big hit, and I had to cook I had to cook one for one customer asked me for, and that's how my business was born. Thanksgiving obviously became a tradition for us because that's how I started my catering business. And
Reem, how did you start yours?
Well, for me, it was always, I always said growing up that my dad has a restaurant, my uncle, aunt, everybody, my brother. I said to myself, I'm not going to get into this and, not see my kids, not have a life, and just be in a restaurant. But I think, like I said, growing up in this type of business, it's really hard to run away.
Right.
So me and my husband I was 24, turning 24 when I opened this restaurant with my husband. And like I said, it was just an idea. We were driving and talking about it. And of course, Dad is in Canada, but he would always, at the time when we were looking what to do as a business together, me and my husband, he would say, Dad, just open a restaurant, just a little one. I'll be like, no, thanks. Just a snack, just this, just that. I'm like, no. And then my husband got on it too. And he's like, okay, come on, babe. That's the only thing you know and you love. And you can't do this. Everybody tells you. And they talked me into it. Not that I don't love cooking, mind you. Right. I adore. Like, this is something I enjoy.
But running a business is different.
Absolutely. That's what I want to tell you. People think if you love to cook, you love to own a restaurant. No, totally different thing. Cooking for you and your family is a totally different thing from running a business. I do not regret it whatsoever. Thank God. I'm blessed to have my business now for 10 years. But we decided, and we opened Lebanese 10 years ago, and it was an absolute success. I was very happy to name it Lebanese.
What does it mean?
People always ask me, what does it mean?
You knew that was coming.
And literally, one of my new waitresses yesterday, she goes, does Lebanese mean anything? And I said, yes, it does. Lebanese means Lebanese. When I say Lebanese, it means I'm Lebanese. Okay? So the place, I wanted to show what the real restaurants and food in Lebanon is, and how we have really diverse, flavors and mild flavors of the kebabs and the shawarma that you see around for every country that has it now, right? Us Lebanese, we have those simple flavors, but they just outburst and I don't know, like into your mouth with just the simplicity of it. Like, I mean, we use spices like black pepper, salt, allspice, stuff like that. People will be thinking like, oh, we use curry, we use, spices that are very spicy. People will ask me, is your food spicy? And I'm like, no, it's not. You just have to try. The Lebanese food
Flavorful.
is flavorful. It's a table. It's not a plate. Lebanese food, it's a whole table. It's you eating this and this and this and this. There's no way that you can eat with a Lebanese and you have just one plate and you have your portion on it. We're big on making portions for a lifetime. My mom always said, make more, better than less. Okay. So the Lebanese food and all this and restaurants was like in my blood. This came just right and handy. And being around people and talking to them and seeing them love my food just kept me going. Every time, of course, you get to points where like you're tired. Okay, this is too much responsibility. But you know what? You look at the people and they're like, oh my God, I'm so happy you're here. And you're like, okay, I'm doing something right.
Well, and then
I have to agree. I mean, the food isn't just the flavor of the food; it's the generosity, is the
Whole
culture, the
experience.
people, and in my place, and I see it at Reem's place as well, is the interaction with the customer. As a chef, I come out every customer that walks into my place. I greet them. I say hello to them. I cook for them, and I say goodbye to them. And that is, I think, what sets us apart, and it's part of our culture
100%.
to do this. And so it's the love of the food, love of the people.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you that my customer base isn't Lebanese. I
No,
get
me
some,
neither.
but we get people from all walks of life coming into our places, and it's reflection on the culture and on Lebanon that we've been talking about.
right, and with that in mind too, before we go to break, I want to ask both of you this: is with amidst your restaurant, with your workers, your family, your customers, what goes through your head when you have that while you're sort of watching this conflict, both from afar and internal. George, let's go with you first.
Well, I revert back to work and to food and serving the people. It is sad, but I want my food to shine and be the last memory in people's mind when they leave my restaurant, not the conflict, not the war. So
Same question to you, Reem. What goes through your mind when you're in that?
It's hard because people will ask you. Some people will ask you, do you have family? How are you feeling? You have the TV on in the restaurant and you have the news on sometimes, and you pass by and sometimes maybe you don't get the news that you want to see because you want the people to see what's happening in your country. And then I walk and it hurts me. I walk, it hurts me inside. When they ask me, I tell them no, as fun as they could be. What could they say? You can't be fine and good and you're at war. I do the same thing that George said. I like when my people come to my restaurant to kind of disconnect from everything and just have the Lebanese experience. I do the same. I think most, if not everybody, of my customers know who I am. I even take shifts that I wait on them sometimes, and I like to make sure they know me. If there's a problem, I fix it. And they know what my culture is and we're all about hospitality. Hospitality is number one. So when they come to my restaurant, all I want them to feel and know is this is us, the Lebanese. And this is why we're telling everybody to care and open their eyes. This is our Lebanon. This is just like us here. The people that are there, they're just like us. The same mentality, the same way they were raised the same way. their hospitality, and they would give you the shirt off their back. You can walk by a Lebanese house and you don't know them and say, I want water. They will not close that door. You'll be in drinking water and eating. We are different, and we like to show in our restaurant that when you come to a Lebanese place, a lot of people tell me, oh, is this an Arabic restaurant? It's a Lebanese restaurant because we define as the Lebanese Phoenicians, full of life, energy, full of culture, and we love everybody. We welcome everybody, and we're so open to all cultures, religions. And my restaurant, like George said, doesn't depend only on Lebanese. I have people that come eat at my restaurant every day from the dealerships and from offices and houses and stuff like that, or Lebanese is their weekly stop, that have nothing to do with Lebanon, but they just love the food, the hospitality.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. You've been listening to Reem Hadir, who's a chef and founder of the Donnelly Mediterranean Kitchen and Bar in Watertown, and also George Nujim, who is the chef owner of Nujim's Mediterranean Cuisine in Winstead. Connecticut Public has been covering the widening war in the Middle East from all different angles, and to see all of our coverage, visit ctpublic.org, and to check out all of NPR's coverage, visit npr.org/Middle East. We'll continue this conversation after a quick break, and we want to hear from you too. 888-720-9677, or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. More than 1 million people have been displaced in Lebanon in recent weeks. Israel and the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah have traded fire for more than a year, but the conflict escalated in September. Today, we're hearing from two Connecticut residents that were born in Lebanon about watching what's happening from afar. And with us still is Ciaran Donnelly, who is with the International Rescue Committee, and Samar El Yassir, who is with the American Near East Refugee Aid. And so both of you have been following this conversation. Would just love a quick reaction from you. We'll start with you, Samar. Anything you'd like to react to what you've heard from George and Reem so far?
I think listening to what Reem and George are saying, it paints a clear picture of the Lebanese people. Hospitality, love to live, love to help each other. The Lebanese are known also to support each other and stand in solidarity with each other. Being hospitable is a trait of the Lebanese. Being proud of the culture of Lebanon and the way of living, we take pride in our music and our way of living and our food and our love for family, friends, neighbors. A Lebanese house is an open house where you have plenty of people coming in unannounced. You don't have to take an appointment to visit the house, and we take pride in this. Also, I think what the culture of Lebanon is helping each other. If you know your neighbor is in trouble, they need help, if they are sick, you go and visit them and you offer your help to them. This is how we live our lives. And this is why it's also so sad to see such people being attacked with such hostilities because they don't deserve it and they don't want it. We want peace, we want life, we don't want this destruction and death.
And Ciaran, you've been listening as well. Anything that you would like to react to?
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. It was really inspiring to listen to George and Reem. And three things I might say quickly. One, everything they said resonates with my experience. Where the IRC works around the world, we're there because of the worst things that are happening to the communities that we serve. But they're not the only things that are happening to those communities. There's good, and there's people who are proud of their communities. And every time I visited Lebanon, like everywhere else, our staff are always eager to show me the positives and often that's expressed through food. And so that's been really heartwarming to listen to that. The second thing is the geographic and generational impacts of conflict, as we've heard from both George and Reem, their own experiences. And we can't escape the fact that there is a generation of children in Lebanon and many other places around the world today going through similar experiences that they will carry with them for many years to come. And the third thing, because as many of your listeners may know, the IRC works not just overseas, but also helping to resettle and integrate refugees here in the US, is the really positive contribution that refugees can make in our communities. And the fact that many of our neighbors and friends carry stories with them that we would do well to listen to and ask questions about and learn from.
Well, we appreciate both of your responses, and we've got about 3 minutes here, but I do want to come back to George and Reem real quick. George, as we're sharing your love for your culture, sharing it with us who may not be familiar with it through food and stories, what's giving you hope right now, or maybe even joy?
Just the love of Lebanon is my hope. Again, I reflect back on what Ciaran said, and we love the people. We get them, they come from outside Lebanon, and they feel just like they're home. And I want everybody to experience that someday. All my customers, from all walks of life, different culture, different religion, to visit Lebanon and to experience Lebanon and to experience the peace, the love, the geographic beauty of Lebanon, the mountains, the sea, the east, west, north, south. It's a magical place that I want everybody. That's what gives me hope for the future, is someday we will return and prove to the world this is the best place on earth to live in.
And Reem, we've got about 45 seconds, but what gives you hope?
What gives me hope? All the people that are right there right now, not scared for their life, helping others. All the young people of Lebanon, all the people that we see, TikTokers, influencers, actors, singers, people of all sorts of jobs going down, helping others from all religions, standing with each other. Churches open for Muslims and mosques open for Christians, where it doesn't matter. Everybody's together. What gives me hope is the Lebanese are strong. We're built strong. We're built proud, and we will rise. I know, standing together in unity, we just want this world to stand in solidarity with Lebanon and just to be human. Feel for others. And put yourself for 1 second in these people's shoes. This world has been crazy lately. Nobody right here is sitting out here not knowing what's going to happen. We're scared. We have hope because we love our Lebanon. And we will rise again. Please support Lebanon and stand in solidarity with them again.
Well, thank you again to Reem Hadir, who's the chef of Lebanese Mediterranean Kitchen and Bar in Watertown. Thank you so much, Reem, for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having us.
And also George Nujim, who's the chef owner of Nujim's Mediterranean Cuisine in Winstead. Thank you, George, for being with us today as well.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I'm Catherine Shen. Today's show is produced by Tess Terrible. Our technical producer is Dylan Reyes. Download wherever you live, anytime on your favorite podcast app. And thank you so much for listening.